Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Beware the Snallygaster. The Blue Ridge Mountains area was settled by German immigrants beginning in the 1730s. Early accounts described the community being terrorized by a monster called a Snallygaster, meaning quick spirit in German. It has been suggested the legend was resurrected in the 19th century to frighten freed slaves. Reports of a strange flying beast known as the Snallygaster first appeared in Frederick County in early February 1909. The story was carried prominently in Middletown's Valley Register, a weekly newspaper, for about a month, when the story mysteriously died. In the early issues, the flying beast seemed to be everywhere at once: New Jersey, West Virginia, Ohio, and headed this way. It was reported to have created quite a stir in New Jersey, where its footprints were first discovered in the snow. The first person to see it, James Harding, described it as having enormous wings, a long sharp beak, claws like steel, and one eye in the middle of its forehead. He said it made shrill screeching noises and looked like a cross between a tiger and a vampire. A vampire may have been a good description, for it was reported to have killed a man, Bill Gifferson, by piercing his neck with its sharp bill and slowly sucking his blood. It was also seen in West Virginia, where it almost caught a woman near Scrabble, roosted in Alex Crow's barn, and laid an egg near Sharpsburg, where it was reported some men had rigged up an incubator to try to hatch it. T.C. Harbaugh, of Casstown, Ohio, wrote a letter to the Valley Register in early 1909, telling of a strange beast that flew over his area making terrible screeching noises. Harbaugh described it as having two huge wings, a large horny head, and a tail 20 feet long. He said it looked as though it was headed this way. Sure enough, the Snallygaster was first sighted in Maryland by a man who fired a brick-burning kiln near Cumberland. The strange beast was seen cooling its wings over the outlet of the kiln. When the beast's sleep was disturbed by the man, it emitted a blood-curdling scream and angrily flew away. It was also shot at near Hagerstown, sighted south of Middletown at Lover's Leap, and seen flying over the mountains between Gapland and Burkittsville, where it was reported to have laid another egg, big enough to hatch an elephant. Sightings of the Snallygaster were creating such a commotion that at one point it was reported that President Theodore Roosevelt might postpone a trip to Europe so that he could lead an expedition to capture it. Apparently the Smithsonian Institute was also interested in the beast. From the description provided by a sighting at Shepherdstown, West Virginia, they determined the strange beast was a Snallygaster. The last sighting in Frederick County in 1909 occurred near Emmitsburg in early March. 3 men fought the terrible creature outside a railroad station for nearly an hour and a half before chasing it into the woods of Carroll County. 23 years passed before the Snallygaster appeared again in Frederick County. First reports were received from just below South Mountain in Washington County. Eyewitness accounts claimed that it flew toward them from the Middletown Valley. The beast was often seen flying back and forth over the area and was described as being as large as a dirigible, with arms resembling the tentacles of an octopus. The creature appeared to be able to change its size, shape, and color at will. Although the creature made no attempt to harm any of the residents of the valley, most people sought the safety of their homes as it flew overhead. All descriptions seemed to indicate it was the Snallygaster, last reported in these parts on March 5, 1909. As the life expectancy of a Snallygaster is only about 20 years, the most logical explanation seemed to be that the latest sighting was the offspring of the 1909 creature, possibly hatched from one of the eggs laid near Burkittsville. Since the Snallygaster appears so rarely, the Middletown Valley Register requested that local residents sighting the creature provide as accurate and detailed a description as possible for scientific purposes. Two such residents, Charles F. Martin and Edward M. L. Leiter, were able to provide the necessary information. While driving a truck on the National Pike just east of Braddock Heights, they spotted the Snallygaster flying about 25 feet overhead. They thoroughly confirmed the descriptions published the previous week. The Snallygaster finally met his end in a way some might envy. The creature was flying near Frog Hollow in Washington County when it was attracted by the aroma of a 2,500-gallon vat of moonshine. As the beast flew overhead, it was overcome by the fumes and dropped into the boiling mash. A short time later, revenue agents George Dansforth and Charles Cushwa arrived on the scene. They had received information about the still, but were rather startled at the sight of the dead monster in the vat. The two agents exploded 500 pounds of dynamite under the still, destroying the remains of the Snallygaster and John Barleycorn's workshop. A great deal has been written about the Snallygaster since 1909. It has appeared in countless articles in the Middletown Valley Register, Frederick News Post, and other area newspapers. It has also appeared in the Baltimore Sun, National Geographic, and Time magazine. In 1976, the Washington Post sponsored an unsuccessful search for the Snallygaster, as well as other strange Maryland creatures. Snallygaster, German Schnellgeist, a Pennsylvania Dutch term meaning quick spirit or fast spirit, often associated with those strange drafts that slam doors, topple over lightweight objects, or scatter papers. The visual or physical appearance of the Snallygaster is confusing since there are several variation narratives, some having roots in the dragon lore of the early settlers. Thus, the Snallygaster more often has similarities to dragons, green and scaled, and winged. Tales exist around the South Mountain region where the Snallygaster is a monstrous bird preying on young children. Literary accounts of the Snallygaster were printed in the local newspapers. These narratives were most likely invented tales by two rival editors. To end the rivalry caused the Snallygaster demise, sent plummeting headlong into a boiling vat of whiskey. Such a just end for this unseen spirit. Of interest to scholars is the nature of the various tales likely invented, those which were patterned after dragon lore, the absence of Native American influence, and its connection to Pennsylvania Dutch lore. Note, even though the Snallygaster is said to be the Maryland monster, you rarely hear much about it, though there have been a few hunts conducted within the Patapsco and Cunningham Falls state parks in recent years. I even heard that a Snallygaster den was located near Camp David at one time. Believe what you may.
Me, college student home on break in Maryland. Have a couple of friends back home who are also into urbex. One of them tells me about Patapsco State Park. Apparently there's some cool abandoned churches there, plus other interesting stuff. Make plans to go there. Plans fall through, friend has to do something else that day. Fuck it, I'm not going to be back home long enough for us to make another plan. I'll just go myself. It's a bit later in the day than I'd planned on account of waiting for the friend. Get there at about 4 p.m, it's mid-November so the sun's already kind of getting low-ish. Park the car and start hiking. First church is easy enough to find, a big white Protestant structure right off the parking area. Spend a bit of time fucking around in there, climb a bit into the steeple. Go down the trail and find more shit that my friend said was there. Check out an old water cistern. Check out an old car in a ditch. Check out another old car in a ditch. Yo wait, there's even more up this way. Look up and see the other church. This one makes a much nicer ruin, 100% stone, Catholic construction. Name as St. Stanislaus Kostka Catholic Church, pics are related. About 6 o'clock by now, valley's not in direct sun anymore but light's still pretty good. Go up to the church, find one guy there with his GF smoking weed. Give them a bit of light-hearted shit about it while I check out the church. I'm an architecture friend, sue me. Eventually Guy and GF leave to go home or something. Notice a few stone blocks lying off in the woods a bit, go to check those out thinking they're from the walls or something. Realize they have writing on them. It's a cemetery. Start trying to read the graves. Hear a voice from off in the woods. Hey, man, what did you find there? Think it's weed guy again. Abandoned cemetery. Pretty cool, right? Look up, it's not weed guy. Some guy in black sweatpants, black hoodie, black baseball cap, and sunglasses even though it's getting dark is standing there. I looked at him kind of raising an eyebrow. Yeah, man, can I come see? I mean, it's not like I'm stopping you or anything. The guy laughs a bit, kind of strange. Can't describe it too well, seemed a bit deep and to go on too long. Yeah, but seriously. It's kind of hard to get in here. Can you help me a bit? The area by the cemetery is kind of thorny, I'll give him that. Yeah, I get up, look over to him. There's no thorns barring him from getting in. He could literally just walk over to where I am. Step back a bit and keep staring at him, trying to figure out if I'm going to get knifed out here by a psycho. My friend's the one who always carries when we're urbexing. I'm never in MD long enough to make it worth getting the concealed carry permit. Guy thinks the hesitation is funny, starts laughing again. What's the matter, man? Are you scared or something? Yes. No. He thinks this is even funnier. Come on, I'm not trying to hurt ya. Just say I can come in and we're good. He's been kind of shuffling his feet along a sort of invisible line this whole time. Follow the line with my eyes, it matches with the line between a few of the cemetery's corner fence posts that are still intact. Realize I may be in over my head here. Still, he can't enter. He grins and takes off his sunglasses. I said I'm not gonna hurt ya. I just want to get in there. Just say I can come in. It's dark enough by now that I figure it's a good time to turn on my cell phone flashlight. Plus now that his face is unobstructed I want to get a better view of it. His eyes are dark. Like, 100% black. In the strong light of the flashlight, I can see through him to the woods beyond. Are you a ghost? Kind of. Don't like the sound of that. Take a seat on the ground. Figure as long as he can't get in, I'm safe right here. Guy no longer looks like he's thinking this is quite so funny. So you're not gonna let me in, I take it. Probably not. He crosses his arms and takes a step back from the cemetery border. Kind of shrugs. Ah well. It's not like you're the only one. Fades away right in front of my eyes as a strong wind picks up. Tree branch cracks and falls maybe 20 feet away from the cemetery border. Not gonna fuck with that. Turn off phone light to save battery. Stay inside that cemetery for another 2 hours. Finally head out at about 10:30, I haven't heard anything in a while and my battery's getting low. Be on DEFCON 1 all the way out of there just in case I run into him again. Never do. Parents were kind of pissed that I was out that late, but whatever. It was honestly a really strange encounter. I was pretty scared when I saw his eyes, but I think I managed to do the right thing to get out of the situation. Looking back on it, I believe him that he was more interested in the cemetery than he was in me, but at the moment I was thinking more that the cemetery was my only safe place at the moment and that there was no telling what he could do if I let him in there. I also definitely believe that he basically allowed me to go, and that if he'd really wanted to he could have waited around and really fucked my shit up when I finally left. It seems like that church probably gets at least a few people a week based on weed guy, so his interest in me was mostly as a tool to let him break through the protection of the cemetery. One tool can usually substitute for another, so I basically was just one failed attempt in a series until he hit a success. I kind of wish it was a cooler encounter, but not everyone hits the supernatural pay dirt. It was definitely scary as it was happening. As an aside, I just remembered that that's not the only encounter with a demon I think I've had. I swear there's one trapped in a music box at the back of my dresser, but that's another story.
My phone won't let me Greentext. I've had lots of experiences with mimic ghosts. Lived in old Maryland house built in the 1700s, right by the Underground Railroad. I had a creepy lil black cat who I loved but was an asshole. Walking upstairs one day and see him on the stairs smelling something on the carpet. Split second later I'm in room and he's fast asleep on my bed. Another 2 times, I hear my roommate downstairs yelling, banging pots and pans, stomping. I go downstairs like WTF is up dude, and he's sitting calmly reading on the couch and says he was never in the kitchen. I worked graveyard and usually got home about 7:30 a.m., but this time I stayed late to help get breakfast, got home at about 8:45. Roommate gives me the most scared look, says he heard me outside yelling his name to get in like the door was locked at about 7, and he opened the door and no one was there. The very last time I was in that house, went back for some upstairs stuff, we were almost all the way moved out into a new place. House is giving me the extreme nopes, and I'm there by myself. Using downstairs bathroom, and I hear roommate calling my name from upstairs. He's at work at this time. Noped the F out of there and never returned. I hated that house.
Lilburn is one of the most beautiful homes in the town of Ellicott City, Maryland, and it is also the most notorious of the town's haunted residences. The unexplained happenings here have given rise to ghost stories that date back more than a century, and they still continue today. Lilburn was built in 1857 by Henry Richard Hazelhurst, a prosperous business owner who would go on to make a fortune in the iron trade during the Civil War. As the years passed, a series of tragedies struck the family as Hazelhurst lost his wife and several children. One of them, a daughter, was said to have died in childbirth at Lilburn. Hazelhurst outlived most of his family and died in 1900 at the age of 85. In 1923, the Maginis family purchased Lilburn, and it was during the time in which they lived in the house that the stories of ghostly activity in the mansion began making the rounds in town. It was said that footsteps were heard by the family in the tower, along with many other strange noises which could not be explained. It was suggested that the ghost might be the daughter of Henry Hazelhurst, who had spent her final days in the house before dying when giving birth. Tragedy almost struck another family at Christmas time that year, when a fire broke out and much of the mansion was ruined. The place was completely rebuilt, except for one minor change. When the tower was reconstructed, Maginis chose to replace the Gothic peaks that had been on it with stone battlements. Apparently, this slight change did not sit well with the ghosts of Lilburn, because paranormal activity began to increase, leading many to wonder if Henry Hazelhurst himself might still be lingering behind. The stories of ghosts continued for years, and the house was owned by several different families. In the 1960s, it was purchased by the Balderson family, who had their own share of supernatural tales about the house. The phantom footsteps continued to be heard, and the family dog refused to go into a small room on the second-floor hallway. On another occasion, a heavy chandelier in the dining room began swinging back and forth during a party, startling many family friends. The windows in the tower refused to stay closed, and at one point, Balderson resorted to tie the windows shut with a heavy rope. By the time he had finished tying the rope and walked outside to see the windows from the exterior of the house, the ropes had already been undone and the windows opened by unseen hands. A housekeeper for the Baldersons claimed to hear a child crying in the house and also to have smelled a man's cigar in the library, even though there was no one else in the room. She also claimed to see several apparitions in the house, including the shadowy figure of a man and a girl in a chiffon dress, walking down one of the hallways. Following the Baldersons' tenure in the house, it was purchased by Dr. Eugenia King, who lived there with her son. They also reported problems with the tower windows and a repeat performance of the chandelier in the dining room. An additional occurrence took place when a vase of flowers suddenly turned upside down and emptied itself onto the floor. In 1983, the house was purchased by another family, who restored the house and made some major renovations. They claimed to have no encounters with the supernatural occupants of the house, and yet by 1988, it was on the market again. The house is private property today. History of manifestations. In Ellicott City, Lilburn Mansion's ghosts have been made public knowledge since the 1920s, with new stories being added to town lore throughout the years. In a small town, news travels fast. The mansion was ruined in a fire around Christmas of 1923, though the new owner, John McGinnis, and his family got out safely. The mansion was completely redone, with the only structural change being the steepled Gothic tower. The Gothic peaks were taken off and stone battlements, similar to the top of a castle, were put there instead. This change didn't meet the approval of the discerning unseen presences, who before this took place were unnoticed residents. The active manifestations began in earnest during this time, as entities don't like change of any kind. Being rich in the 19th century didn't guarantee that family members wouldn't fall victim to circumstance or disease or dumb human accidents. The Hazelhurst family lost several children. One daughter died in childbirth in this home. Mrs. Hazelhurst died as well. In fact, most of the Hazelhurst family died before Henry Richard Hazelhurst finally received his eternal rest, or is he still residing in this mansion? Perhaps members of his family stayed to keep him company. Manifestations, entity of a small child. This little entity makes its presence known by crying in an upstairs bedroom. One family who lived here reported that their dog was afraid to enter a second-floor room off the hallway. Entity of a young girl. Housekeepers have seen an apparition of a young girl wearing a chiffon dress, playing in various rooms of the mansion. This entity of the same young girl was seen walking down one of the hallways with an entity of a man. Two ghosts seen together, sounds like a father-daughter duo. Entity of a man. The form of a male apparition once materialized in a doorway right in front of a witness. The aroma and sometimes the actual presence of cigar smoke drifting through the air is noticed in the library. Manifestations in the dining room. The heavy chandelier in the dining room began to swing with vigor during a 1960 family event, which surely livened up the party. This chandelier did the same thing in front of a future owner who lived here several decades later. A vase of flowers elevated off its stand and turned itself over, pouring the water and dumping the floral arrangement on the floor. Manifestations in the tower area. The sound of heavy footsteps climbing the tower stairs is heard by the living. The windows in the tower area open by themselves, sometimes refusing to close. One energetic resident even tied them down with rope. No sooner had he come outside to see the efforts of his labor, the windows were untied and open once more. Still haunted. Yes, indeed. The entities who reside here coexist with the living, and get their chuckles on occasion but never hurt anyone.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.